Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this very special episode tonight of A Break in the Clouds with Penny Kelly. You can find her work at YouTube here on Penny Kelly is her YouTube channel. You can find her on her new website here, which is consciousnessonfire.com. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. And of course, you can support her on her Patreon at patreon.com/Penny Kelly. Let's give her a big warm welcome, Penny. Welcome back to the show.
It is good to be here. And I want to start before you even say anything. I'm just going to preempt and say, I want to say thank you to everybody who sent wonderful healing thoughts and healing messages and all of that. When I went to the doctor and had all the x-rays, they said, well, it'll be 2 to 3 months for healing. And and that was at about the 2-week mark where I was like, I can't stand the pain anymore. I'm going to the doctor. And then, then a miracle happened. And I just wanted to share something that I think, I don't know that I can explain it, but very well so that people go, oh, yeah. But there have been a couple of times I have gotten into a state of consciousness that I call, actually this is a term that Daphne and I have talked about very little, the end state for the human, which is when you become this liquid light. And so there was a night somewhere after the 2-week point, but before the 3-week point, where I woke up, my back was hurting, I couldn't move. And so I just thought, okay, I'm just going to do some breath work. Got into this deep, deep state in which you're not breathing in or out. You're just all breath, and right. Turned into this liquid light. Could literally feel the bones, the tendons, the muscles, the tissues, the blood, everything moving on command. Hang on a second. I should have turned that off. Just got into this place of being able to feel every bone, everything in there, everything. Because it was L1, lumbar number 1 was the one that was broken. And everything else it had blood in it and was hurt, was stretched, was strained, was sprained, etc. But after that night, and I felt like somehow I had gotten extra energy from everybody. and after about 2 hours of being in that state and just visualizing that bone being good, all the tissues, everything being healed, I got up the next day and was like I'd never had a broken bone, like the fracture was gone. That was I think I was 1 day short of 3 weeks at that point. I went into that the next night, did the same thing. And then the third night, the same thing. And after that, it was like, wow. So then I just, it was like, oh, wow, I've had a boost. I think it came from a lot of people. I want to appreciate that and just say thank you. Miracles do happen.
Absolutely. And the power of us coming together is absolutely bigger than we are led to believe. And this is, of course, why they're separating us at this time. So I want to piggyback on this message from Penny and also thank all of our supporters who had joined us in this live healing meditation guided by Sorita and Teria here a couple of weeks ago with you guys here, sending our love to Penny, of course. So thank you, everyone, for supporting us in that. Yeah. Now, Penny, before we start here at the show, we have a lot of things to talk about here today, and I just want to maybe tune the audience here a little bit onto this conversation. Somebody just put something up. Hold on, I'm trying to find that to scroll back. Anyways, I can't find it now, but somebody said, thank you, Penny, for putting out that video of the white wall. Okay,
Oh,
so yes, folks, we're going to be talking about that tonight.
yeah.
I did share, so Penny, I did share this white wall video with my audience 2-3 times earlier this week here because it fell into the context of my interview with Cliff High and also my last interview with Janine, where we were looking at what was happening this week and how we were decoding all of that. So some of our audience is already familiar with that, but what I think we should do just to begin here is maybe if we can give a very short overview of the white wall for this particular episode for people who might not know what we're talking about, and then we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to look at the energies that are happening this week and maybe in the next couple of weeks after that. So, and again here, the white wall, Penny and I did a much more in-depth show on the pay-per-view. We brought in the alien component, the human trafficking. We're not going to touch that here. This is a very delicate subject, but you're going to understand between the lines here where Penny is going. So, Penny, let me give you a few minutes here to maybe give us an update or a synopsis of that reading here of Behind the White Wall.
Okay. So just very briefly, the white wall is something that as an intuitive working with people over 43 years, I would occasionally run into this white wall. And the white wall, the significance of it was stop. Just stop. Don't say anything more. This person, whoever it was, has a core lesson that is coming. And if you say any more, you're going to give away the lesson and they will not choose freely. And so I had run into this over the years, not very often, but often enough. And I think the big thing, like, holy cow, I see what you mean by a core lesson. I had a young woman, and I'll just say this very briefly, who was here in this life to learn humility, because her last dozen lives, she had managed to get herself involved in people who were, or, you know, to be a daughter or a son or whatever, people who were very rich and powerful. And she was used to just giving orders, and she was a little on the arrogant side. And she was having this reading and said that, you know, she wanted me to say how her trip to New York was going to be. And I said, well, I don't see any trip to New York. And she, oh, yes, I'm going to New York. I said, well, I don't think so. Oh, yes, I am. Don't be telling me what I'm going to do or not do. And I'm like, okay, you know, you set this consultation up to hear what I had to say, and you don't want to hear it now. And so I started to talk to her, and this white wall came up. And it was like, drop the subject of New York. Don't say any more. Okay, so then a couple days later, she was going to be leaving in 2 days for New York. And she had a job lined up and a place to live and all that. And she was a runner. So she was running down a highway. Somebody hit her with their truck and left her to die. And she, next car down the road, where there were not a lot of cars on that highway. But the next car down the road saw this heap at the side of the road and thought, that looks like a human. And he stopped, and it was a doctor, and he ended up saving her life until, you know, she ended up in the hospital for a long time, a couple months, I think. Couldn't walk, everything broken. And she didn't go to New York, long story short. So her mother called me after the accident happened and said, I just want to let you know that she is in the hospital. They're not sure if she's going to live or not. She got hit by a truck and they left. They hit and ran. And so my knowing at that point was, that was the lesson behind the white wall. That was to make her totally dependent on doctors and nurses and aides and family and people, and to have to rebuild herself. Because when you have to rebuild yourself, you do that, and it is not only physical, but it's symbolic. You have to rebuild your entire psyche, your lifestyle, your financing, everything. So, so at that point I thought, okay, this white wall thing is really serious, because I didn't always know what was on the other side of the white wall for other people. So anyway, that was years ago. Probably, I'm going to say at least 15 years ago. So, so then I was looking at the world. I was agonizing about what was happening in our country and where were we going. And I saw this little break in the clouds. This was last November, I think it was.
I think we started the series just before the election. So October, November, we started doing these breaking the clouds based on that. Yeah.
Okay. So I see some good things coming. And then all of a sudden I see the white wall. And it was like, oh, uh-oh, this is not good. Because it was a white wall for the entire Western civilization, for the entire U.S., for everybody. And so I was very concerned about that and thought, okay. So long story short, I talked about the white wall and said, I think we have some good things coming, but there's a core lesson for us in, and I don't know what that is, and I'm not at liberty or free to say what that might be. But it's usually pretty serious. Right. Damn serious, in fact. So that was last November. So then I think it was the right around July 10th or 11th. I was trying, I'll just say I got a message from my people, okay? These are people from elsewhere who are very concerned about what's happening on this planet. And there's a group that I almost always work with, but then there are some others that I know of and have met with. And it was this second group who said, and I'm going to say this, of the 2 or 3 groups, one group is adamantly no interference. You're on your own, sink or swim, do or die. The others, they're not into interference, but they're into giving as much help as they can possibly give, with the idea that when you're in the situation that we are in, you need this, you need help. Take it, take the help. So anyway, they come in, I'm having this little bit of a conversation, and they said to me, we think it is important for you to tell people what's on the other side of the white wall. And I thought, okay, I thought this was a core lesson. And I had known, I'd come to know since last November what was on the other side of the white wall. And I was really kind of on pins and needles. But when they said that, I said, I don't know, maybe, am I going to ruin the lesson? And are we going to still make it? And they said, at this point, you're so close to the turning point. You're so close to winning that we don't think it's going to make any difference one way or the other. The
people have already chosen all their paths, is what you're saying.
What's that?
Well, okay, it's like it's not you're not influencing many people at that point, because everybody's already made their decision. They're in the timeline they're supposed to be by then. There's very few stragglers, I think, is what you were saying in this interview, because you said July 10th or 11th, and you and I were recording this, I believe, on July 13th. So that makes sense to the audience here. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. So that message really was, you have, let me say it like they said it, enough of you have held the consciousness. Enough of you have refused to give up. Enough of you have continued to take action toward correcting the situation. In other words, not everybody.
Right.
But enough. and enough of you have refused to get involved in violence and have held on to hope and have held on to this assistance or this assumption that there would be a return to law and order, and to love and things like that. And for that reason, you have earned the right to be given, all the help you can get at this point. And they said, tell people that the people at the top, there's many, many layers. There's like 3 or 4 dozen levels or layers of control above us. The people who are at the very top were not from planet Earth.
I was just going to ask you to make a precision there, because people think, oh, the people at the top brass. No. You're talking above, above
way
the Earth,
above all that, okay. Way above.
Okay.
And we haven't really talked much about what goes on when a planet is targeted for takeover. But I'm somewhat familiar with that. I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know quite a few. And so that whole issue, if you will, of the people at the beings, we'll call it the beings from elsewhere, who were trying to take over, really see the writing on the wall, and they left. They pulled out. And I was stunned. I was just stunned about that. I started to cry. I might cry again. But it was so shocking to me that they quit, that they gave up and pulled out, that I was just like, oh my gosh. But they, what typically happens in that pullout is that the people who, they usually a takeover takes hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Right.
Okay. One of the signs that your planet has been taken over is the appearance of the word corporate. The goal is to begin to replace the body of humans and their thinking and their lifestyle and their everything with this other body called the corporate. Corpus means body. And so there's typically going to be the appearance of corporation and money, because the money is what builds in the competition and screws up the cooperation. And little by little, the corporation is given this right and that freedom and that recognition and, blah, blah, blah. And long story short, pretty soon the corporation has as many rights as the humans. And then the last step is what they're trying to complete right now, is the corporate takeover or ownership of the humans. If you take a substance that allows your DNA to be changed, you are now a unique product that belongs to that corporate structure, and now you are controlled by them. And so that's in process right now, and there is quite a fight going on over that.
So just to speak about levels here for the audience too, as you're talking about this corporation or this entity that is replacing the humans or the real born on earth humans here, we could do a quick dive into the birth certificates, but you're tying into that was also a precursor here into giving rights, removing rights to other people, and how we are all basically dead at sea in corporations. But at any rate, we won't get into too much of that here. But what you're saying now is, now we went from that paper contract, right, to now having this genetic contract with this substance. And so this was probably the last key here, the last lock to your prison cell in terms of this corporate ownership. If you want to put it that way, I think that's what you're saying. So it's very, I'm trying to paint a picture here for the audience.
I didn't make that connection with the birth certificate, but that's part of the process of infiltrating in such a way that nobody notices the infiltration.
That's
and
it.
pretty soon all of the rights are gone, and other things that are not quote unquote living in the way that we are, they have all the same rights, and they begin to be favored. Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've done a good job basically recapping part of this episode here where you're talking about these galactic wars, these takeovers, the mechanisms of takeover, and we're not going to touch the big angry words there on the screen. People, if you're interested in that and understanding how that all ties in, please do go and watch that pay-per-view. We put it on that uncensored server for a reason. And now, on top of that, Penny's just explaining here a little bit more the reasoning why the information passed about the white wall was being held back for the last couple of months. Now we know why we're so close to it now. We've graduated to this point here, I think is what Penny is killing. So there's good news in all of that. But at the same time here, there is a lot of stress moving forward for each and every one of us. Whether you've made the right decision, the wrong decision, we are all being shaken by what's happening now. And as we were looking at the dates between July 23rd and 28th, and in my interview with Cliff High, we talked about the fact that it was very possible that, well, no, let me backtrack. It is very significant that we are at this tipping point in the human history. And the white wall is another example of this tipping point, right? After we cross that, we're in a complete new paradigm, if you will. But what was interesting with some of his forecast language was that we might not know and actually see it between the 23rd and the 28th of July. It may take some time because there's a lot, of course, we're in this fog of woo. There's obfuscation at every level. So I did get some comments during the week. Penny's wrong, nothing happened. Cliff's wrong, nothing happened. Okay, let me just, maybe, okay, so maybe you guys are right. But at the same time, maybe a lot happened and we don't know it yet. But let's talk about some of the things that you've been feeling this week, Penny. You mentioned Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Do you want to go there, or let me know?
Hang on. Let me say a couple more things to finish up about the white wall.
Okay.
The big message is just because the guys at the top have left doesn't mean that you're home free. The fighting has to be finished now. Right. The war is over, but the fighting is not. And so the big message was that there are like 3 or 4 dozen layers of control that have been built in. And those layers, there's big struggle happening now at the very top, knowing that the people from other planets have left. Mm-hmm. And the people that are here, you know, one of the things that the process of infiltration goes like this: they disrupt a town, or they disrupt a region seriously, and they keep on targeting that because it creates disruption in the family structures in that region, and that results in maladjusted individuals. And then they watch those maladjusted individuals, and they try to get them involved and get them to come over to their side
in leadership roles.
That's right. And they promise them the sun, the moon, and the stars if they will just do this or just do that. Mm-hmm. And the result is that they end up with this huge collection of psychopathic and sociopathic and seriously maladjusted human beings running everything. And that's what we have to finish dealing with. And I don't know how we're going to do that. There are many layers, but the guys, the second layer down, they know that the layer at the top is, those guys have pulled out. And so now the second layer is like, we can handle this. We can get control. We can run the plant. We can have everything at our little fingertips. And and that is really not the case, because they don't have the mindset. They don't have the vision. Most of all, they don't have the off-planet backup systems. They have some technology, but they don't. They're not nearly as good as the off-planet people who have, they travel to other solar systems, or they're even not only just interstellar, but intergalactic. So Yeah, so all of that has to be taken down before we come to a place of peace and common sense and can build a new world.
So those couple of layers that are left now,
like 30 or 40.
right?
Yeah,
It's interesting because one, they're fighting with each other. Like, you know, daddy's left there and they're not sure anymore. You know, they're all jockeying for
that's right.
position. So they're busy with that. That makes them vulnerable. And at
Yeah,
the same time, as you said, their higher backup is gone. And two, they do have tech, not as big as the other tech that the other guys had. And they might not also have the foresight or the understanding or even the technology like Looking Glass to look so far ahead. Maybe now they're limited to a little bit of a lesser forward view, which makes them even more vulnerable to us who are waking up and changing the timelines as we are all coalescing together. So that's what's happening now. It's very fascinating you're putting that in those terms, because I was always of the impression that once we start seeing that fighting amongst themselves, we would be close. But what's happening now in the last year is they didn't just double down. They didn't just triple down. They've quadrupled down, like, oh my God, like they're stuck in this loop they can't get out of. They're stuck and they're dying there. And my question to you here, maybe it's off topic to where we're going, but do you think they're starting to realize that now, that they're on a path that leads to their own destruction? Have they realized that, or are they not there yet?
Not only do that's one of the things I was picking up big time this whole last 2 weeks, is not only have they realized the precariousness of their position, because we know, and they know that we know. That's why they're going full steam ahead with the masks and the lockdowns and things like that, because if they can't control us, if they can't keep us locked down, then they're in deep doo-doo. And they know that, and they're trying to make sure that we do not have access to them. Some of them are going to try and hide. Some of them have already tried to go away and hide. There are good people from off planet who are like one of the things that these other people that I'll call them the bad boys. One of the things that they always do is create this whole set of layers, composed of people from our planet, ordinary humans that they have, built up their ego terribly, so that if they pull out at the last minute, we only look at those humans. They hide the bad boys, the ETs, the bad ETs hide, so that nobody even knows that they're here. And so for a lot of people, that's just science fiction kind of stuff. And so when they pull out, we're left with all the layers that they built in that we have to then take apart, and they are home free. And one of the things that happens, they have to pull out soon enough before it starts to really turn the corner, because the good ETs who are out there and who are saying, come on, you guys, come on, we're trying to help, we're trying to support, we're trying to nurture the consciousness, etc. They cannot do anything. They will fight. They will attack, but they can't do that as long as the bad ETs are on the planet working with us, and we are doing it all. And the bad ETs say, well, look, they're the ones doing it. We're just here. We're just, we just need a place to stay. And so it's a game all the way around. And when they finally pull out, we tear one another apart, which is their plan, let them go after one another. And they can say to the ETs who might come after, the good ETs who might come after the bad ones, they'll say to the good ETs, well, look, they're doing that to themselves.
Right.
So we have to get more sophisticated. We have to get more, I won't say global, that's not the word I want, but we really have to take on a consciousness that recognizes that we are not the only ones in the solar system. We're not even the only ones on the planet. And
we have to join. See what's happening right now, and Cliff was explaining that too. We're creating these self-organizing collectives everywhere because we're being misled by our own governing structures. So we're starting to create our own. And what needs to happen now, and I think what Penny's alluding to, is all of these self-organizing collectives need to start merging together to form that bigger unity consciousness, not just here on the planet, but with our cousins in space as well. Okay, on the screen right now, Karine is saying that's why the censorship. Yes, they've quintupled down, and they cannot have any narrative break. And this is why in this last episode that I published last weekend, we had so much trouble. We suffered this, what's called the denial of service attack and a /dot effect that same weekend. So I don't know if there was something trying to prevent some of this information from getting out. Maybe it was the timing of all of it. At any rate, our website is back up now. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, go check it out. It all ties in here to this white wall. Now, when you mentioned these elites pulling out here, some of them realizing that there might be at the end of their rope, you were saying something to me just before the show here that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday this week, you were feeling this weird type of dread energy. And I was mentioning to you that my family too, myself too, were having, again, these weird fighting dreams, like something very difficult was happening in the field. Now, I'm going to ask you a question to that, but I'm just going to scroll back a little bit here because some of our audience members here are aware that just the last week or two here, we had two deluges in China leading up to potentially something happening to the Three Gorges Dam. Now, as that was happening, we were also getting flooding in Germany. Now, in Germany's case, we had reports that bodies were coming up, and these were not local bodies. These were dead, long dead bodies. These were bodies of smaller people, just to say it that way. And so this was all covered up. And now what was happening in China was that the BBC reporters who were covering some of these dams breaking, these deluges, these floods, basically, the Chinese government was harassing them not to report. And I was asking, well, why not? It's everywhere for everyone to see. The water is going through. So maybe there was something more than just the waters here. Again, something coming up to the surface here that would expose a lot of this planned takeover, which is what you were talking about here in the ETs and human trafficking video. So just for the audience to tie all of that in, it's all happening at the same time. So now when you talk about pulling out, we can get into the waters thing too, because I know you're probably seeing that in a minute. What were you seeing this Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday? And what can you share here carefully with the audience here, again, not to trip some of our censored words?
It wasn't really seeing as much as it was knowing. There were a couple things that I just felt like I would all day, all night. Was like, something awful is happening. And it felt like it involved death. It felt like maybe it was arrests of some sort. I don't know. Can you say that word? Can you bleep that out if you can't? If that's not what was.
No, we're allowed to talk about rule of law, justice. These are all perfectly good terms. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. No, peaceful rule of law. That's absolutely perfect. You understand?
Okay. Yeah, I felt that either there was some kind of drama, something happening in terms of rule of law. And the potential, or it wasn't even potential. It was like somebody's dying. Somebody is leaving us and is angry. There was this intense feeling of dread. So that was part of it. The other thing was this extraordinary, these pictures of Three Gorges Dam, which I have not had time to pay attention to what's going on with the Three Gorges Dam until probably just a couple of days ago, when I finally was like, what was going on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? And so I took just a little moment and saw that the hurricane had gone right over that area, that there had been a lockdown on information, and that it was, I was like, I don't know how that dam is going to survive. I saw that dam going down a year ago in September. And I, at the time, I thought, oh my God, that's half of China's population along that river. They cannot afford to lose that dam. When I was looking to see, you know, how is it, how bad is the flooding, etc., they had this storm, this hurricane. They don't call it a hurricane, some other storm. That was coming in right over that river, number one. And the concern in this article was that there were, I think, 500 million people along the river, that there were 27 nuclear power plants along that river, and a whole bunch of other kinds of, well, I'll just leave it at things you know, that are connected to various laboratories and military things that are based along the river, that if that dam goes, that's going to be a global tragedy, global. And I remember when I saw it a year ago, I had this same sort of a, oh my God. And people were just standing there looking at the wreckage. Nobody was saying a word. There was this grief. It was this kind of a speechlessness. And I haven't, I think the dam is still up. I don't know. A couple of generals have died already from the flooding. You know, military people wiped out. Lots and lots of censorship. And the other thing that I would say, I don't know where I saw it, but it was quick, and it was a showing of all of the protests happening, the protests and the floods, and more protests and more floods, and it didn't matter where. There were there were too many to count on my fingers and toes, in terms of massive protests. And so where Cliff, I haven't seen the Big Woo. Was that the name of what you just put up there?
The Beyond Alta, the Big Woo, yes.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet, so maybe I'll have to go and watch that. But the thought that I had when I saw this little quick news summary thing was that there were massive protests, millions of people, maybe hundreds of millions all around the planet, saying that's it, it's enough, we're done. And that, I thought, might be what if Cliffy was saying something's going to happen between, what was it, the 23rd and the 28th?
Yeah.
That was probably it. None of that has been reported. None of that.
Almost none, yeah. It's very hard to find in mainstream news, of course. And when it's here on YouTube and other places, it gets scrubbed really quickly. Because as you were talking, I was looking for that hurricane storm satellite imagery going into Three Gorges Dam, and I can't find it. But it was on my screen earlier. So it's things like that that's happening. At the same time, somebody was talking about the censorship earlier, and I wanted to bring this to your attention too. It's getting worse and worse now, because the Anti-Defamation League now is partnering with PayPal, again, to fight hate speech.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of us out here are being accused of hate speech, even though we're not doing hate speech at all. This is the excuse they're using. And here in Canada as well, just now, Ottawa's laying out a proposal to basically create the Ministry of Truth. So, Orwell, here we go. We're here now.
Oh my God.
I thought I'd have a little bit of fun with you guys with that, but that's where they're going again. So, okay. Now, going back to these dams, you said something earlier about earlier this week, and I wanted to bring up this image here. So on a different topic, and of course I'm using some funny words here, but in tarot we have this card called the Hanged Man, and so it's very possible that this is what you were picking up, or somebody in this position here earlier this week. Are you at liberty to say? Should we even get into that here now? Does it matter, or can we say how this individual departing might affect what's going on in the coming days and weeks? How do you want to address that, Penny?
I would say something a little bit different.
Okay.
An awareness that just kept hanging there. It just stayed right with me over and over, day and night, was everybody's waiting for one thing. They all describe it differently, but it's really only waiting for one thing. And that one thing is the collapse of the United States. And everybody knows it's coming, and everybody sees that's where we're headed, and everybody's freaking out over that. And that hanged man, which you put up there, is a card of waiting. It's among other things, but it is, I think, one of the things that I've seen since I did the last look-see was that we are going to, between now and the end of the year, we're going to watch the whole thing go down, the money, the government, the everything, and that there's going to be zero attempt to save it. There has been a lot of warning. People should be prepared. They should have their meds, and they should have their food and some water and their connections and some batteries and things like that. Mm-hmm. I want to emphasize that. I can't get away from the knowing that that's coming, and that it gets after, I'm going to say, probably the first week in August. It stays kind of smooth, maybe. But when I get past the 8th, 9th, 10th of August, it's like, oh, wow. 8/8.
Well, that's a Lionsgate there too, right?
Okay. I'm not sure what what's a Lionsgate?
So Rita was just talking about that in the earlier show, talking about some of these astrological alignments. So August 8th is a Lionsgate now, and she was talking about how the energies were shifting and moving very quickly after that. So a lot of people were here stuck in the mud and all of this. And talking about stuck in the mud, here's what Trump was saying here to the Justice Department just today or yesterday. And again, we're all waiting for that one too. It hasn't dropped yet, but when is that going to drop? Very potentially now is what you're seeing. The second week of August, maybe we're at that point. Do you want to speak to that too in your look-see? Is it safe here, very gently, to talk about this topic as well here?
Yeah. Well, I can't remember. It seemed like the thing that I got a YouTube slap for was that I said something that didn't agree with their stories about the injectable and the health situation and all of that. Right. But one of the things that was in the look-see that I was just not able to get around was the fact that the war, everybody was involved in the war by the time we got to the end of August. And that people didn't want the United States to survive. They didn't want the old system to be restored because they were understanding finally that it was a setup for corruption, and they want something that cannot be corrupted. They want local government that they have some control over and some say, and that I'm going to say the Trump camp and the Biden camp and the every other camp that exists are waiting for the old system to go down, and they could not or will not make a move until they feel that the majority of the population has had it up to here. They're waiting for the people. And that's why it has gotten as bad as it has, because the people of the U.S., won't get off their dupa and speak up or organize anything. But, the ones who will organize are the people that we don't want to organize, the people that have other organizations that are very questionable.
Right.
Organizations that start with A and end with A.
You just said that in August. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you. There's a little bit of
go ahead.
Okay. You just said that in August there at some point we're all in this war. And it's funny you chose those words because, and again, you haven't had the benefit of seeing this episode, but that's exactly what Cliff is saying. We are getting to that tipping point where even the normies will clearly understand that we are already at war and that we have been at war, and we just didn't know about it because of the mainstream media, the mind wash, the mind control systems, the foods, the drugs, all of this stuff combined, the total spectrum dominance that they have to, to basically, what's that thing in Star Wars? These are not the droids you're looking for, right? So you're not at war. Don't worry. Just watch TV. take your medicine. You're all good. And pay your taxes, right? Don't forget to pay your taxes.
Oh, wow.
And what Cliff is saying is that all of these indicators that would normally tell us, hey, we're at war, they've all been obfuscated. And here's the problem. If you walk outside in the morning and you see a black cloud, you go back in the house and say, oh, I'll bring my umbrella. It might rain.
That's right.
And so now what's happening, because all of these signals are obfuscated, a lot of people are walking around with no umbrella, not knowing what's about to hit them. And this tipping point that he was talking about here in the Big Woo was that tipping point where suddenly we reach a critical mass of humanity knowing that we're at war. And the minute they go into that mind shift, everything changes, because now they start coalescing with the other self-organizing collectives that are already engaged in trying to preserve their rights, to preserve their health, to preserve their families. And now suddenly we start to have unit cohesion, which is what we've been missing, and which is also what they've been working very hard to suppress by separating us here for the last year and a half. Your thoughts on that?
I think that's exactly right. I see that we are going to, that the financial system is going to go down, and we're going to come to the end of the fiscal year, which I think is at the end of September. October 1st is, somebody was just telling me, it runs from October 1st to October 1st. And at that point, I don't know, at that point, it's over. It is over. Everything kind of comes to a stop, comes to a halt, and it's very, very messy for several months. And I think we will face that death of the U.S., of the old version of the U.S. And then there'll be a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months of pretty serious grieving. And then when I get to like next spring, March, April, people are looking around saying, hey, it's spring. What's new? What's possible? What can we do? How do we deal with this? We have lost some people. God forbid that we lose the number of people that some are predicting. Because that, when I put that into the mix, that just blows all of the rest of it out of, how do I say it? We go from, some bombs dropping to a nuclear explosion.
Right. And again, here, just for the audience, this is also part of the linguistic, predictive linguistic here coming up, was that people would realize that their families, friends, who have been harmed, I'll just say it that way, are actually casualties of war. And so again, that changes the mind shift to that nth degree, right? It's not very incremental. That's a huge boom, stop, ow, okay, what the hell just happened? What do I do? And one of the big words of wisdom from Cliff here was that, hold on, that's the big thing. Don't go out half-cocked, looking for violence, looking at that local person in your neighborhood who might have injected somebody else. That's not at the level we need to think of things. So we need to think on a much more global perspective. And I know some of you will be frustrated with that when you understand that and you've lost some family members. But what we're saying here is, no. The violence here is not the situation. It's not the solution at all. We have to come together as this huge self-organizing collective, not just us, the humans and the civilian parts of the population, but the military part of the system here that is also working towards the light to remove all of this evil that has infiltrated. And that marriage has to happen very soon. And that is also what we were talking about in terms of that particular component of the military becoming visible to the rest of the civil population
Right.
here, that they are indeed active, and they had been active for a long time, but just covertly. Again, nobody knew we were at war yet. So this is the big shift that is upon us now, and that is going to create a big stress on a lot of people making that final realization. And we were just asking for everyone to just cool down, and as you're being forced to react, or if your neighbors, your friends are like, what are you going to do about it? Hold on, delay, breathe, look at the whole situation, and think where you want to go. Don't be pushed everywhere here through these emotions. Those were the big words of encouragement. What do you have to say to that, Penny?
I was going to say something very similar, because I'm a farmer. I'm oriented toward, okay, in times of war, what happens? Supply lines go down.
Yeah.
Sometimes, lifestyles are interfered with. So my advice would be get some big pots of soil and plant some lettuce and some cabbage and some peas and get a couple of grow lights and set it up in your front window, and have some fresh food available. Get a food dryer and dry some fruits and have those. If you have a freezer and you have a generator, freeze some fruits so you have that in case electricity is lost. You'll lose the fruit, but you can take it out of the freezer and dry it.
Right.
And you can dry it just, by putting it on a screen and leaving it sit. You might have to rinse it a lot to keep the mold off of it, like most people don't. Well, anyway, let me not get into how to do meat. But you need to be thinking about having at least a couple, 3 weeks worth of food. 2 years ago, Donald Trump made September National Preparedness Month.
Yeah.
And I remember knowing at the time I heard that, why is he setting that up? And as soon as I asked that question, the answer was because 2 years from now, he's going to need people to be prepared. Mm-hmm. And he's going to start saying in September, hey, you need to be prepared. You need to have some stuff that you can, some water, some food, some access, etc. So think about the food thing. Get a couple of good books that you can read, or if you're an artist, get some paper you can draw on, or some new crayons, or some new, not crayons, well, Connie crayons, maybe. Something that you can do. Take up some sort of a hobby, etc., just to pass the time if we get into winter and, you don't know what to do with yourself and you can't go out or whatever. You need some way to secure your consciousness, to secure your psyche. So your food is one thing, your psyche is another. Have things like an extra box of matches, go through your spice cupboard, what have you got? That kind of stuff. Make connections with people, set up a signaling system. That not many people are going to feel confident about being able to relay a telepathic message or pick one up.
Right.
But just try that. I tell my students all the time, try stuff. You're going to be stunned at what works. And then have something that you can maybe trade if you need to trade. Have some dollars, have some coins, keep your silver. I did see silver going up. Finally, silver. I think silver is going to go up finally.
Let me bring that up. I had it on my screen here. So a lot of the audiences are going to ask, okay, where are we on that famous $600 or $700 silver? All of this was delayed. And of course, we have all of these weird competing timelines. But what's Penny is saying here is very similar to what Cliff just said in that episode too. This is in relation to a past Bare Naked Wealth report, I think from 2017, in which where he had predicted that Bitcoin would eventually hit 64,000, which at the time people thought he was crazy. It hit 64. It retraced by half, which was also his prediction. He said 30 to maybe 40%, but we actually went by half. We're at 30%. We're at 30 grand, and now we're back up to 40. But he said in that same report, in that same year, we would see $600 silver before Christmas.
Yeah.
So where are you now in your look-see when you look at silver? What do you see for the audience?
I saw cryptos going up, and I saw silver going up to just what I saw originally. It bounces up to 800 and then settles back down to 600, 590, somewhere right in there. And that was like October, November, December, January. It was a little crazy at the end of the year. And really lot of people looking for whatever they can trade. When we get to January, a lot of problems in January, a lot of challenges in January. So, and those challenges start unfolding, but the bright spot, if you have some Bitcoin or some cryptos, if you have some silver, if you have some gold, those go up. And that, I think, is really, it's like, oh my God, do I dare say it again? I saw it, and and that was like maybe, I don't know, back at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think the first time you said it on our show was either December or in the January look-see even, because we were looking at March and April. I think at that time is what we were looking at. Yeah.
Right.
Fascinating.
Right. No.
So folks, in terms of bartering, silver is recognizable, and so especially the old silver, what people call the junk silver now. So maybe get your hands on those a little bit if you can. I missed my interview yesterday with Andy Sheckman. He was coming on the show to give the Beyond Mystic audience this special of the week, and of course I was just too busy and I had to postpone Andy here to next week. But this special is still live, so if you guys are looking for these 1 ounce Britannias from Miles Franklin, please do go check that out. That is the coupon code here for the Beyond Mystic audience. You can fill this form out. I'll just bring that link down below, because if you guys don't have silver, it's getting harder and harder. We've had these admissions now, even from the U.S. Mint, that we're in this a global shortage of silver. So something at some point will hit the road, and that's what Penny's saying here. And we had that crazy. Let me ask you this, Penny. The $800 maybe retrace back up to 400, then back to 500, but that was just a starting point in the precursor of silver eventually shining to where it's supposed to be. That's not the end price. What do you see maybe a year down the road or 2 years down the road for silver?
When I get 3 years down the road, it's almost priceless. So there are things there's so many things that change. Silver, I remember looking, I don't even want to say what I see. I'll just say that silver was like Bitcoin and like cryptos. It just was like, oh my God. My mother used to have this saying, who would have thunk it? And when I saw what's down the road, that was my response. It was like, oh my, I'm getting to be like my mother. Who would have thunk it? So the whole idea and attitude about money and how to use it and how to set things up changes pretty amazingly over the next 5 years. And so when I get down the road a piece, I can't even describe really very well what I'm seeing. It's like, what?
Well, Cliff High had silver going to parity with gold and maybe even surpassing gold. So again,
okay, I don't feel so bad.
No, you're in good company. I'm not done. Jim Sinclair, also Mr. Gold, says that when this moves, silver is going to be like gold on steroids and could eventually surpass gold. So again, and so just so you know, Jim Sinclair and Bill Holter. Bill's been on our show a couple of times here. They have this newsletter at jsmindset.com, and they were talking about how just now doing the calculations, and this was back in February or March of this year, before all of this money printing that just happened. And at that time, doing the calculations, they were seeing gold at $97,000 per ounce is what it should be at. So where's silver going to be in all of this in 3 years? Well, let me bring up one little goodie from the past here. This was Woo Woo Dude last year on our show. This was the Three Dudes in the Desert Part 5, I think, with Joe, Dave, and I. And he was seeing tubes of silver for $50,000. So divided by 25. So that gives you an answer, a few $1,000s per ounce there of silver. So
I have to say, what I saw was 1,500 to 2,000.
So you're in good company. So can you imagine that, folks? And there's a reason now, and also Andy was saying this in the show last week, why all of the sovereign funds, why are the big families, the big money, why are they at a fast clip removing all the physical silver from the COMEX, from all of these vaults around the world? They're front heading something that they know. Of course, they're part of the club. We are not. And so we're being told on the news, everything's okay. Inflation's transitory. Oh, it might be here, but it's going to be good for you. Don't worry. Whereas the big money in the back are taking all the physical off the table. So
right.
They want physical, think about it.
They want stability during this awful transition that we're going to go through.
Right.
They want to be able to say, oh, okay, we don't know how this is going to go. And they don't.
Right.
And they know that they're no longer in control. So the whole thing around money, the whole thing is going to change the thinking, the way it's used, all of that. So.
Wow. Do you want to talk about crypto a little bit more? Well, let's talk about this one, Bitcoin. So just we can do a whole crypto show you and I at some point, but just for Bitcoin now, you say, of course, it's going up. We've had these in the data for a while of these $100,000 Bitcoin parties before Christmas. Also, we might be there now. Do you see Bitcoin moving forward 2-3 years down the road, or is it eventually going to be surpassed by something else?
It has some competition. But it's, I think for the foreseeable future, which I usually figure is 2 years, it's pretty much the centerpiece, the stage. It gets all the attention. There are others that are going to give it a run for its money. So Ethereum, Theta.
Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. All right. Are you interested in doing a crypto report with me? I think if you and I dived into that,
well,
I would be very interested.
Okay.
All right. At some point, I know you're busy.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, Penny, we're about an hour in. We've talked about the white wall, what we see moving forward. We've given them advice here on how to maybe prepare for some of the things coming, not just physically here with food and water, but mentally for what's happening, and also to stay calm, stay grounded. Is there anything else from the White Wall report or any other recent look-sees here that you think is important that we add to the conversation here tonight?
One of the things that came up that I was struggling with myself was this question. How are you going to forgive? And I was like, hell too. So that was my first gut reaction. Hell too. And so there's this bit of ferociousness that I think we're going to see some of that same kind of response in other people who then don't question, where did that come from? That what is your plan for? I think the way to forgive is to create the future, is to think about, what do we want? What are we creating? How do we want the government to look? Governance, not government.
Right.
I don't see a government. I see a lot of different forms of governance that are, how do I say, they're struggling to get established. How do we want to use money? How do we want to make sure everybody is taken care of? How do we want our food to be grown? Because one of the things that happens in this whole debacle, this breakdown, is that the food system, which has been severely poisoned and ruined, and the soil has been ruined, that has to be dealt with. What kind of food do you want to have access to? Can you even imagine food that makes you healthy instead of food that makes you fat?
Right.
That's one of the things. What do you want to travel around in? Where do you want to get your electricity from? How do you want your house to have to be cared for? There are new forms of housing that are coming. They're out there. They're out there already. They are phenomenal forms of housing, 2 or 3 new, totally new kinds of style, design and development. And have you thought about that instead of the same kind of stick-built house that we've been putting up for the last, 400 years, which is either under-insulated or overbuilt or needs constant painting and fixing and repairing in order to keep the darn thing up? There are materials out there that don't require any maintenance. And you can flood the whole town and your house can be underwater, 5 feet underwater, and those materials don't mold and they don't rot and they don't disintegrate. What about it? What about education? What kind of education do you want to have? Be thinking about all these kinds of things. What about healing?
Mm-hmm.
So, all of these things are, what about the arts? What kind of music? What kind of dance? We have sort of abandoned that, and we need that. We need the arts as a form of self-expression. That the artists see what's coming. They try to paint that. They try to, compose music that addresses that. They try to sculpt that. They try to design, goods, stuff. Everything that we have is designed by somebody. Who designed this? There's a whole new form of cell phone coming, a whole new form of communication. What do you want for communication? What if you don't have to carry a cell phone anymore? All of that is it's not only in the works, it is ready. It's already being demonstrated. I think if we can get in to a point that we can say to the guys who screwed up everything, well, thanks for that.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, we got a whole new world here, and we got all.
Now we know what we don't want. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So, you were a pain in the butt when you were doing that, and we couldn't see, but we see now, and thank you very much.
Right. Well, Penny, you're doing such a great job with your look-sees, with your teen consciousness, and of course, you're very prolific with your books here. And I want to bring this up. Daphne gave me this earlier today. You've just now launched a new version of your website. Of course, all of your ebooks are here now for sale. I'll bring the link down in the description for everyone here. But the first one on the screen there, Getting Well Naturally from Soil to the Stomach. I love that. So that's a good place to start, folks. And in terms of your mindset, the Robes for sure, The Evolving Human, these are all very, very prescient books here in creating the new earth that we all want and deserve for ourselves. So please do go check that out. And also, Penny was just telling me too that they're just about ready to send that first monthly newsletter in a couple of days. So if you're not subscribed yet to the newsletter, please join that here. Let me bring that link down here in the live chat as well for you guys, so you can sign up while we're live here and get access to that first newsletter. Now, Penny, do you have a hint as to what's coming up in that newsletter? Do you want that to be a big surprise, or you can tell the audience what's going on?
I have a couple things. I was just going over a list today of okay, what is it I want to include here? What it will include is a little bit of an update on what's going on in the world and what I see happening in the world. It'll have advance notice of classes. People have a hard time getting into my classes because they're limited to 30 people, and they sell out very quickly. And so you have a little bit of a leg up there if you want to sign up for a class. The Tea and Consciousness, what those dates are going to be, and the sign up for those will be in that newsletter. And the like where am I posting events that are coming? That haven't traveled very much this last year and a half because of the whole mess our country is in, and it might not be traveling a whole bunch over the next year because of the mess our country is in. But if I am going to be somewhere, then it'll be in that newsletter.
Okay. Well, there you go, folks. You can go and check that out. And of course, you can support Penny as well on her Patreon here at patreon.com/Penny Kelly. Explain to the audience there, Penny, what they can find in these 3 different packages here you have for them.
Okay, so the alpha package is, it's kind of some access to some things. And the look-sees are in that alpha in written form. The video form is not in there.
Okay.
The beta gives you access to all the videos. Gamma gives you access, well, Gamma actually gives you access to everything, but also little extra things that we do. And Gamma is a place where if you want to give people have actually said, can I donate? And I can't get it together to get a donation thing up there because I'm too busy. But so we just made Gamma something where if you want to give a little extra, if you think it's worth it, then sign up at the Gamma level. So.
Okay. So there you go. And speaking of donations, folks, let me bring up my little tip jar here. I've had a hell of a couple of weeks here, folks. Of course, this all started with that Cliff High video. Well, actually, it started 2 weeks before with Patreon censoring us, Janine and I, for apparently inciting violence. And so it's been one problem after another here for the last couple of weeks. So I want to really thank all of the audience members for sticking by me and helping me as I went through this fight. But this was the last one. This Cliff High video caused quite a bit of a ruckus here in our internet provider told us that we were suffering a denial of service attack that weekend, including what was called a /DOS dot effect. And so anyways, our website went down and went up and went down, and I had to go through all of these rigmaroles and paying these huge IT bills to get all this back on track here. So we're finally there. I didn't have a budget for this, guys, not at all. And Penny and I were just talking about this a couple of weeks earlier, how expensive it is to have these private servers where we can put our content to not be censored. And of course, now we know why it's expensive, but also why it's so needed, because at a flick of a switch, some other entity like Patreon can say, nope, you're not allowed to talk anymore. Or the Anti-Defamation League could say, no, that's hate speech when you talk about, the health situation or whatnot. So this is the world we live in now. And so, folks, thank you so much. If you can find it in your heart and you have a little bit of room, and I know it's hard for everybody, please use that tip jar there on the screen. I really appreciate that. It'll help me go a long way here, paying for all of these damages here in the last couple of weeks. And of course, go and support Penny also, either through her own Patreon or by buying some of her books. That keeps her going as well, so that she and I can continue doing all of these free shows here on YouTube for you guys. All right, Penny, in the last couple of minutes here, any last words of wisdom before we go for this beautiful weekend here?
I would say take heart, people. We're not seeing it, we're not hearing it yet, but we are turning the corner. We have a turn signal on, put it that way. So don't give up. Try to see further, try to hear deeper, try to feel what's uncomfortable to feel, and don't freak out about that. Just let yourself know, okay? We're coming to a new world. We're coming to a new human. Let's go there.
I love it. That's great. Oh, that's a great way to end the show. I love it. And Aussie Girl says, JC, Young platform, your platform will be the new news channel. I love that. Yes, absolutely. Will be the new Woo channel.
Okay, very good.
What I told me the other day, he says, JC, you should call your thing, instead of pay-per-view, you should call it Paper Woo. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. It's pretty catchy.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Oh my God, what a fun night. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. This was a Break in the Clouds with Penny Kelly. We're going to try to be doing at least 1 month of these, Penny and I together. So maybe look for August 25th around that time. Usually Penny will be good with her next look-see, and she'll come back and give us a little bit of an update. Yeah. And in the meantime, please do go and subscribe to her YouTube channel here at Penny Kelly, and also on her Patreon at patreon.com/Penny Kelly. And last but not least, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe here on Beyond Mystic. We're almost back at 20,000. We're still missing quite a few people since the last deletion, but you guys are coming, and so thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I love you guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Very